Welcome back to the Always Bayern Chelsea program. Today is Monday, October 7th. As we record this, it'll most likely come out tomorrow on the 8th. Both of our teams, Bayern and Chelsea, drew this weekend in, I guess you could say, exciting fashion.
It was exciting fashion. I mean, both games had a lot of chances going on. Bayern match ended up with more of those chances being put away than the Chelsea match. But every team showed up and did some things right, did some things poorly. That's just the world of soccer sometimes.
Yeah, let's start off talking about Chelsea and their 1-1 draw to Forest.
Yeah, Chelsea rolling with the Maresca Premier League lineup that's been being put out there for the most recent Premier League matches since we acquired Jadon Sancho. So, you had him out there on the wing with Noni, then Palmer in there, Nico Jackson, Enzo, Moises, and the typical backline of Cucurella, Fofana, Colwill, Gusto, and Big Bob Sanchez between the sticks. I mentioned this lineup because we've specifically been talking about lately how Chelsea switched completely their team between Premier League, Conference League, maybe a Carabao Cup game. So another reason for me to say that it's very impressive they're doing this. The guys are finding ways to get in sync with each other. And although they drew Nottingham Forest on a fine Sunday morning, I think there were some positives to take from the match.
Yeah, it was a roller coaster of a match, I thought, throughout the whole, really 90 minutes, to be honest, and including stoppage time, which some people are saying there could have been more stoppage time. That was one of the themes of the match, that Forest kind of was milking the clock. But overall, what I took away from this match was Forest looked like an older, experienced team who was very committed to their shape and their tactical style of play, whereas Chelsea was clearly the younger, more fiery, more energetic side, maybe a little bit more reckless at times, but really Chelsea has talent that Forest doesn't have, and then Forest kind of hopes to neutralize some of that with experience and, just mentality.
Yeah, Chelsea end up with almost more than double, actually, the XG that Forest had. I think 2.4 to 0.8, something along those lines. Not that that means everything in the sport of soccer. It certainly does not. But Chelsea at times were controlling the game. I think Forest, the way they play, they're essentially saying, no matter what, we're going to be a middle-of-the-table team, maybe even towards the bottom in the relegation zone. We're not going to be a better team. We're not going to control the ball. We're going to shithouse you all match long. And if you're not aware of what the dark arts and shithousery is, time wasting, hard tackles, drawing cards, attempting to start fights against players, coaches, refs, all the above. And Forest are great at that. Chelsea are still learning how to bring some of that into their side. They are a younger team, don't have as much experienced players that are good at that, being a leader that can take control and do some of that shithousery. I think we're starting to see Colwill is going to be that guy for sure. But that's kind of the game it was. And Forest, when they do all these things that get under your skin, ultimately they get a result that they want. And that's a point on the road at Stamford Bridge.
Yeah, and, as you mentioned, I thought that Forest was very much committed to the shape that they had and letting Chelsea just dominate possession, as you mentioned, which Chelsea did. A lot of times they would get the ball and start something and then let Forest kind of re-slink back into the shape that they had with that block. Chelsea really just needed to be quicker on that counter and more aggressive faster.
Interesting dynamic for Chelsea because you mentioned being quick. I agree. On the right side, you kind of had that, but at times too quick. You got, in the first half, Noni Madueke being too selfish, and he would make quick moves at times down the flank and then cut in and shoot, maybe when he has a teammate, if he waits a little bit longer to cut it back to a Palmer, an Enzo, somebody like that, instead shoots it wide. And that first half for him was very frustrating, while on the left wing, you had a similar defensive setup that Sancho was going against in that low block, and he's able to, at will almost, break these defenders down. I think he was 3 for 3 in successful dribbles past guys, but no shots from him at all. many are calling for him to shoot more because at times he looks for the pass too often. So really a direct contrast between the left wing and the right wing, and they were both maybe on their worst games, if you will, in that first half, which is why they didn't score in the first half.
Yeah, I wrote that down too about Noni being a little bit selfish in the first half. He's just so quick with the ball when he has it that a lot of times maybe somebody else on the team isn't even up with him, so he just fires off a shot or something like that. But I noticed a few moments in the first half from Palmer kind of like that as well, where he was, I don't know if selfish is the right word, but maybe there were just no teammates around for whatever reason, and the offense wasn't completely clicking. The defense from Chelsea in that first half certainly looked very good, but the offense just wasn't quite in sync. Like you said about Sancho, I thought he did very good in terms of creativity and, like you said, breaking the block. I think a player like him was very important for this match. I thought he had a good match overall. Sure, maybe he could shoot more, but his creative dribbling was just kind of what you need to break a block like that.
Agreed. He's a player I want every single day of the week against a team that plays a low block. Thinking back at this match, hindsight's 2020, of course. Would have been nice to potentially see Nkunku for the first 60. I think Nico was largely invisible on the day, not due to his own problems. When you're playing against a low block like that, as a striker that loves to make runs in the channels, the opportunity for those won't be there as often against a team like Brighton, for example, who presses higher, takes more reckless risks. You're going to see that open all day. But against Forest, those weren't open. Jackson wasn't getting the ball service he usually gets from his teammates because, frankly, it just wasn't there. So it would have been interesting to play that over with a guy like Nkunku who maybe operates in those tighter spaces more. We'll never know for sure. We'll see it potentially in some matches against other opponents. But, yeah, that was an interesting piece for sure. And I think is why it led to Chelsea struggling in that first half a bit.
Yeah, I can vividly remember at halftime in that match pulling out my phone and looking at some stats, pulling up SofaScore and looking at stats. And I saw Jackson in the lineup, and I visibly did a double take. For some reason, it's obvious that Jackson would be starting in the striker role, but I couldn't think of a single moment where I saw him in the first half, and I couldn't remember if he started, thought it might have been a mistake on SofaScore. And that's not to knock his character, We'll talk about Bayern Munich here too in a little bit, but I thought Kane was pretty much invisible in that match, as well for a good chunk of it. So, again, not knocking Jackson himself. Like you said, a lot of that is due to the style of play from the other team and the service or lack of service,
Yeah, tough day for Jackson. It's going to be like that at times in the Premier League, no doubt about it, for a striker. Erling Haaland even has days like that where you look at him on Sofa and he's at a 5.8. Then he scores 3 in the second half. But it's just going to be like that some days. Chelsea are a young team. For those that were rushing a little much and saying Chelsea were competing for a title, Maresca was kind of pumping the brakes earlier this week. I think Chelsea as a team pumped the brakes a little bit with that performance. I'm still happy with the way they're playing. They're still showing the style that Maresca wants to play, pressing well. Noni is being praised for his off-ball activity. Was great once again with the most interceptions, I think, on the day for the team. So things like that I love to see because the style is being imprinted on this young squad.
Yeah, I can agree with those thoughts really to a T. I don't think I have anything else to add. You definitely got to pump the brakes on some of these high aspirations. You don't want to add pressure to the team, but also at the same time, shoot for the moon.
Yeah, and like I said, I'm still super pumped about this team. And, in the second half, we saw a better performance from Chelsea as a whole, I would say. They do give up a goal off a set piece, which at times is very frustrating. Chelsea bring in this set piece coach, Bernardo Cueva from Brentford. Brentford renowned for their set piece play. It's going to take some time. A team like Arsenal that does really well with some of that took them a few years to get things in order. That doesn't worry me too much, kind of an offhand goal, and those can be more frustrating, but it's going to happen against lesser teams. But then almost instantly, Chelsea are able to bounce back, recover, and Noni puts it away and has a better second half after what most viewed as a poor first half. And that's the life of a guy that tends to be cockier, a little selfish, big ego, shoots a lot. He's going to have his good days, bad days, good halves and bad halves.
Yeah, I think after that first goal that Forest scored, it was clear that they were very intent on just being patient, sitting back, really parking the bus even more than they already were for most of the match. And I think just kind of hoping that their experience was going to get them the win, or, maybe get them a draw, just get them through the match. And I think that Noni's shot was super good. It was just really, really accurate, just completely pinpoint. And I think this match kind of as a whole just shows what you're going to get from him. At times maybe recklessness or lack of involving the rest of the team, and then also brilliant shots at times that are going to lead to goals and maybe assists.
Yeah, the interesting thing you said about Forest there, they were very wanting to be in a low block, take the draw at that point. But it was almost as if Chelsea led them out of it, because the last half hour, including 13 minutes of extra time, was about as insane and back and forth as you can get. Forest were on the break trying to counter all the time, and then Chelsea would come back and they'd both give the ball up, and then the other team would counter again. And it was crazy action, and the teams just didn't defensively do enough. I think, part of it was Forest were down to 10 men after a second yellow for Ward-Prowse, and talk about shithousery. I mean, I get he had to stop Jackson from getting a great wide-open lane, but diving on the ball, grabbing it with your hands, is a bit much. I think we can all agree with that.
The more I think about it, the more I realize that a lot of things in this match did mirror the Bayern match, because the last however many minutes, maybe 30 minutes in the Chelsea match, maybe more like 10, 15 in the Bayern match, was completely wide open. Both teams just scrambling on either end, chaos happening, massive opportunities happening left and right, and also a man diving on the ball and holding it with his hands.
Yeah, I just don't put anything past Forest at this point. That's their game. That's what they do. You have to respect a certain part of it, because when you know that you don't have enough talent and that's what you're going to do, it is what it is, and it's been successful for them.
Yeah, and, later on in the match, this probably contributed to some of the chaos, but Chelsea did start to bring on a handful of subs.
Those subs, I will say, Maresca should have brought some on earlier. Didn't bring on the first, I think, until the 80th minute-ish. Ends up bringing on basically nobody that did anything except for Mudryk. Neto did have a good cross to Felix, who missed a header that could have potentially gone in, but Mudryk, in my opinion, was the only one that really showed a ton of heart and passion and willingness to do what he could to get the team the victory. Puts a ball on a platter for Christo to have a header. Brilliant save by Sells. Don't get me wrong. You got to put that away. I could say the same thing for some Forest shots that ended up being brilliant saves by Big Bob Sanchez, but that run that Misha made, which was coming off the brilliant save Sanchez makes, where the Forest player inexplicably gets past Fofana, terrible defensive mistake, essentially has a one-on-one with Sanchez on that left side, tries to curl it in the far post. Sanchez dives to his left, makes the save. Cucurella collects the ball, swings it out to Mudryk, and he runs down 3/4 of the field at a dead sprint, dribbling the ball. Fastest guy in the Premier League, in the world maybe, on a soccer pitch.
Davies might like a word.
Mudryk's faster than Davies. Come on, are you kidding me? Yeah, but Mudryk runs so fast, and I'll say it again, puts it on a platter, goes up to Christo and says, "Hello, sir. This is your appetizer for the evening. It's going to be a nice big header right into the back of the net." Christo says, "You know what? I don't like the smell of it, sends it back to the chef. Sells says, not in this kitchen. Too many metaphors at this point, but the point is Mudryk was awesome. The keepers were awesome. Sanchez and Sells, co-man of the match.
Yeah, that was definitely what you need from Mudryk, where he uses his pace in a way that's controlled enough to deliver a midnight snack really right for somebody in the box. And I also thought that Neto did a good job of that too with his. You kind of briefly mentioned that, so I'll give him another shout out there. But ultimately what all this chaos came down to at the end, like you said, was just a shining series of moments for Sanchez. I really cannot overstate how well he did at the end and how many. He probably made 4 super good saves at the very end of the match there.
At least, and I would say the toughest one came after the one I just described, where Forest get a ball into the box, a glancing header by, I believe, Jota. Sanchez, watching it live, I have no clue how he saved it. Still don't after watching the replay, but has to quickly react, I think, to his right, puts a hand on the header. That would have been at the death for Forest to score. Would have been back-breaking heading into the international break, which we're all depressed about. And to make that save, just putting the team on your back in that moment, incredible.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if we're ready to jump into awards, but my man of the match was Big Bob Sanchez.
Only guy you can give it to, because without those saves, you lose and you get no points. Because of him, you end up with a point. Are you happy with a point? Probably not. But due to Bob, you're getting that point.
Yeah, I think maybe some will disagree, but my Robin of the match was Noni for scoring that goal. Again, it's kind of both sides of the coin right there with Sanchez and Noni.
From the perspective of reason you're getting the point, Noni makes sense. I'm going to give it to Cole Palmer. Reasoning being, the world still needs to know who's the best player in the Prem right now. And he did so many things in terms of creation that were better than Noni on the day, more consistent across both halves. Had a few chances at the end that if Sells isn't a supreme top keeper on the day, probably end up as goals. Gets 2 shots off that Sells saves in a row. They were brilliant. If you've seen the replay of his little touch that he had in the box to bring the ball to his right foot and then strike at Sells, the touch is unreal. Maybe a few other players in the Prem are even doing that move. So he did a lot for me on the day. Gets the assist for the Noni goal, so that's always great as well. Guy has the most assists in the Premier League since making his debut, tied with Saka, but he's got 10 more goals than Saka in that time.
Good. I'm glad Saka caught a stray there. Yeah, I mean, you got to shout out your guy. There's no doubt about it, and there's really no shame in it. I gave the underrated Fireball award to Sancho just because of the creation he was doing. I saw a lot of that throughout the match. Just whenever he got the ball, it looked like something was going to give. It looked like he was going to kind of take it in towards the box, maybe cross it to somebody, but yeah, just fantastic creation from him, especially in those one-on-one scenarios.
Yeah, he made Forrest right back at times. Looked like an absolute clown. I like where your head's at with that one. I love this award as my Fireball, my energy guy, maybe even my shithouse guy. And there's only one man for this award. We have this friend from back in high school. He's getting married in about a year. And he would always look at an opposing team, size them up, and say, can we take this team down in a street brawl? And
I still do that to this day. Not even teams. I look at groups of people and I think that.
It's a great thing to do if you just have the time and are sitting looking at people. But if I'm looking at Chelsea, I'd see a guy like Levi Colwill, my Fireball of the day, and say, I'm not messing with this guy. I mean, are you kidding me? He sizes people up, grabs them by the shirt, squares up to them, and smiles like he's having a good freaking time. That's shithouse, if you ask me. He's amazing at it. He stands up for his teammates. He's a huge guy, not to mention a very high-quality football player, technically. I mean, what a stud.
Yeah, I think I would give my Defender of the Match award to Colwell. But I also wanted to mention, now that I'm thinking about defense, there was a moment, I think it was in the first half, I actually don't even remember, maybe towards the end of the first half or beginning of second, where Fofana had a basically saved a goal himself by sliding in near the goal and kind of just the shot hit his knee and deflected way out of bounds. So a shout out to Fofana for that individual moment.
Yeah, him and Cole both made a few clutch blocks in that second half. So great to see them forming a good center back pairing. I do want to mention here that Cucurella and Fofana will both be out on too many yellows in the match against Liverpool once we come back from this break. So that's going to be very, very interesting. We'll preview that, over this international break. Shameless plug right now that I'm thinking about it. We will have an exciting match preview with a Liverpool fan. It's disgusting, absolutely disgusting that we're doing it, but it'll be a great pod. So definitely listen to that over the break, probably toward the end of the break. But yeah, the defense on the day, solid at times, shaky at other times, but overall, we go into this break and you get a draw and you stay hot and unbeaten over the last 6 or 7 matches. Can't complain with that.
Yeah, I mean, Chelsea has looked very good to start this season, or at least the role that they're currently on. So as much as the international break sucks and is boring, and you hope guys come back healthy, because we've been seeing a lot of injuries lately. The German national team, for example, is going to be a skeleton of itself. But with all this stuff going on, Chelsea looks good, and you can be kind of smiling going down the road.
I'm definitely smiling, and I hope all the national coaches take this to heart, what I'm about to say. Please do not play any of my Chelsea players.
I'm feeling the same. Bayern's dealing with a handful of injuries right now that they even picked up in this last match here against Frankfurt. Reports came back today. It looks like Kane's going to be okay. He's in England right now. I think he's going to play for some fucked up reason. It seems like he injures himself every couple of matches now that he's been playing, 90 minutes every time he's on the pitch pretty much. But Upamecano picked up an injury in this last match. He's going to be out 3 to 4 weeks most likely, and same with Tell.
Injuries are tough, They happen. They happen to the best of us. At times, I think they can be avoided as well. A guy like Upamecano, I said it to you during this match against Frankfurt, why aren't they bringing in some other guys, a Dyer, a Goretzka, whatever? I think they can be avoided. I think Kompany right now is just rolling with all these same guys. But yeah, let's just go through that lineup right now that they put out there.
Yeah, well, I will say the way that they are avoided is you don't sell De Ligt and Mizraoui, perhaps, because those are two guys who add depth to your positions that are all injured right now if you're Bayern.
Ask any United fan, they'll give De Ligt back for free.
Well, I think that's more in part due to United in general and their whole defensive structure, but I guess this isn't always Manchester United, thank God. So I'll go over the Bayern Munich lineup to start for this match against Eintracht Frankfurt, who came into this match second place in the Bundesliga with Bayern at the top of the table. We had Manuel Neuer in between the sticks, as expected. At right back, we had Rafa Guerreiro because our right backs are injured, Sasha Boue and Josef Stanisic. Dayot Upamecano and Kim Min-jae as a center back pairing, as we kind of alluded to. Alphonso Davies as the left back, Joshua Kimmich and Alexander Pavlovic in the midfield. Speaking of guys that don't get rotated out, those two have pretty much played every match for Bayern. The attacking trio was Michael Olise, Thomas Muller, Jamal Musiala was hurt, speaking of injuries, Serge Gnabry, and then up top, Harry Kane. I was pleased with this lineup when it was announced. I really wanted to see Thomas Muller start against a team like Frankfurt especially, and he kind of had an interesting match. I guess we can get into that as we start talking about the match, but that was the starting 11.
Yeah, certainly agreed at the time that I thought it was a strong lineup. I went into it thinking, yeah, you're playing on the road, but coming off that tough Champions League result, the boys are going to be motivated. And then I just felt like that motivation I was expecting maybe didn't quite carry over for whatever reason. I don't know what it was. I'm not in the locker room. I can't necessarily comment on their feelings match day, but with experienced leaders that Bayern has, a guy like Muller getting into the lineup, you'd almost expect them to play with more of that fire. And maybe at times that was lacking. I don't know your thoughts on that.
I don't know. I thought that they looked a lot more hungry than they did against Villa. I thought the Villa match, they looked very flat. But this match, I did think the attack looked more creative, more fiery perhaps, and I think a lot of that was due to Muller. I did think that Muller and Kane almost should have been switched in their positioning. Muller was playing higher up than Kane for most of the match for some reason. And honestly, I think that's why the mistakes that Muller made happened, because he was playing as a striker, whereas that's not really his natural position. But nevertheless, Muller definitely made the attack more creative, so I'm still glad that he did get the start there. And this was another match, the third straight match in a row that Bayern Munich dominated, like absolutely dominated. They had probably about 75% possession again. They were in Frankfurt's half of the pitch for pretty much the entire match. And, Frankfurt, again, is one of those teams who's going to sit back, and Frankfurt is exceptionally well off the counter. Omar Marmoush, I think I said this potentially last episode, and, he proved it, but I think he's one of the most underrated players in the world. And his pace is absolutely incredible. Really the only person on the pitch who could match his pace throughout the match was Alphonso Davies. And, as we talk about this match, that was really the big thing. Bayern dominated the match, but again, did not get a good result. Again, they drew a match where they should have won. Because every single time that there was a counter opportunity, every time that there was a good shot, Frankfurt would score.
Yeah, looking at the stats, I didn't even realize while watching how potentially lopsided it appears with the stats. Frankfurt only getting 6 total shots, 3 goals, Bayern 24 shots. Frankfurt's keeper makes 10 saves, which is unreal. Great keeper, but yeah, Bayern, they're getting a lot of chances. The XG maybe isn't as high, so the quality of those chances might not have been supreme all day. But, yeah, you look at that and you look at a team that has the talent, you do expect to win that match. It's the way things fall at times, as I mentioned in the Chelsea match, but you expect Bayern to win, as I keep saying. I say this every week, and it's going to be the same from me every week. With their talent, I just do expect them to play better.
Yeah, and it's weird because, on paper, Bayern has the far, far, far better squad than Frankfurt does. As much as I think Frankfurt has a good squad, you mentioned the keeper. He played an absolutely outstanding game. He had a ton of crucial saves. He had a crucial save even after the goal at the death of this match that equalized. I think it was Muller was just inches away from putting a winner away literally after the 96th minute, and it was 6 minutes of stoppage time. But yeah, I'll mention too, you said Frankfurt had 6 shots. They had 3 what are considered big chances and scored on all 3 of them. So that's the problem with this Bayern team right now and how they're set up. It's their line is so high up the pitch where one mistake and your center backs are scrambling. Again, we talked about the injuries. You don't have the right back that you would want in this type of setup, but there's no coverage. If one person blows by the center backs, which you have somebody like Marmoush, who's one of the faster players out there, he'll blow by Upamecano and it's one-on-one with the keeper. And you can't, in my mind at least, when it's one-on-one with the keeper, you think that that's a goal. You don't expect the keeper to save that.
Yeah, I texted you that at one point in the first half, that the center backs are just out there on their own at times. the left and right back, Davies, Guerrero, whoever's playing there on a given day, sometimes they're pushing high up, and it leaves those guys a little more vulnerable. And that's why you bring Neuer higher up, because he's a little bit of protection there. But it's not always going to be sustainable. I think Kompany almost needs to just decide how he wants to play with this Bayern team in the Bundesliga and in the Champions League. And I get it's going to be tough to do that on the fly in his first season with Bayern. But I think there almost needs to be a difference. You had Tuchel last season, who has a clear style of play that works better in the Champions League, worse in the Bundesliga. That's not a great mix. I almost feel the same with Kompany at times, where it should be working better in the Bundesliga against lesser talent, maybe against some worse Champions League teams. But then at times you could get burned against teams that know how to take advantage of it. It's almost as if he needs to find the right mix of aggression. I don't know how he does that, but he needs to figure that out for sure.
Yeah, and, these last 3 matches, we have 2 draws and a loss. And these were our first big matches, really, the first test of the Kompany era, because he got off to that extremely hot start where he was just really kicking everybody's ass. And we said, now we have these matches, we're going to see how he does in these matches and kind of formulate opinions on his style. And the thing that just, I guess, worries me the most is I don't really know how to fix this. I don't think there's a simple fix, because it almost comes down to changing your style of play completely, which is the thing that's a little bit more worrying to me, because as soon as you drop that line back a little bit, you lose the aggression in the attack, because the reason why this attack works so well is everybody's super far up the pitch, so everybody's distributing the ball, and you have center backs like Upa and Kim who are good at distributing the ball and good at just kind of playing with the ball. So if you move the line back at all, that really sacrifices the entire attack that you have. And a lot of people are kind of chiming for João Palhinha to get some minutes, and I would agree with that too. However, I think that he also doesn't really fit well in this system, because Palhinha is a defensive midfielder, and he can't play as high up as Kompany currently wants the midfielders to play in this system. He would provide some more of that defensive stability that I think you need against better teams. But it's hard, because, like you said, it's almost like he's all out on the aggression right now and reining some of that in. We saw it in this match, for example. He put in Eric Dyer in the 89th minute, and 4 minutes later a goal was scored because Dyer can't play that high up. He got blew by instantly.
This is not a viable solution at all, but the fix would be if Bayern just had a really good back line. If they had a Van de Ven at center back who can sprint faster than anybody in the world, next to like a Van Dijk who's a smart center back and can pair greatly with a guy like that, they'd be so good, because they would know how to control playing that high line. Throw in like a prime Reece James at right back or something, and with his speed, and whoever at left back at that point, if you got 3 of those 4. But that would be what they do. I just don't think that back line is good enough to play that style, and that's going to be tough to fix.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely not. And I'm half blaming the style, half blaming mistakes that are made on the back line. But really, I think the thing is, you can get away with this, like you said, in a lot of matches in the Bundesliga. And it's not necessarily, again, time to hit the panic button quite yet, because you would expect more of these shots to fall. There is an element so far of Bayern getting unlucky, but you also can't, you can't just say that and move on, because there are flaws in this system, and teams, so far have figured out how to exploit those.
Yeah, and, I don't want to get too macro here, but as I just think about this Bayern team, the way the season has started to unfold already, with the talent they have, I just think Kompany's going to at some point make a decision between Champions League, Bundesliga. I think they're going to be so fine in the Bundesliga this season. Leverkusen just has shown they aren't going to be that same top team. I think ultimately he's going to make some decision where he plays all his top guys in Champions League and really goes for that, and still does well in the Bundesliga with a lesser group because they're going to play enough teams that they'll just dominate on any given day. So I'm definitely watching that going forward.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think rotation's going to be key, and that's why I'm a little bit weary of why he's kind of ran with a few certain guys every match when he hasn't necessarily needed to, and now the injuries are starting to happen. And I also think that when some of the guys that have been injured, Hiroki Ito, Sasha Bue, Josef Stanisic, when they come back, those are three defenders who are starting caliber defenders. You would only start two out of those three at the same time, most likely, but when some of those guys come back, you'd think that the back line would get a little bit more, ammunition.
Definitely agree that's going to help a ton. It seems like I'm giving a lot of shit to this back line. Without them, Bayern lose 3-1. Kim, Upamecano, both score a goal.
Yeah. I wasn't sure where you were going with that at first, but let's kind of go through the match a little bit because that's a perfect segue. So I guess the center backs couldn't decide if they wanted to win us the match or lose us the match in this one. But the first goal happened in the 15th minute off of a set piece, which shout out to Kimmich in this match. His set pieces, his corners, flying in there were really dynamite this whole match pretty much. So in the 15th minute, we get one that falls to none other than Thomas Muller, who could have taken the shot himself, but did what he so often does in find the marginally better chance and passes it right up to Min-jae Kim, who finishes the shot and goal very nicely in the top of the net.
And I've only been predicting a Kim goal for the last 8 weeks, so he finally gets one on a week where I hadn't even mentioned him going into the match. Yeah,
and I'm happy for you because it's been a long time coming, with these Kim goal predictions, and it finally happened. And at that point, I was really riding high because Bayern had looked so dominant up to that point. And, they finally got a goal, 15th minute. It felt like more were coming. But then shortly thereafter, in the 22nd minute, we saw what I described. As soon as there's an opportunity, Marmoush, in this case, takes it and scores, blows by our back line. There's nobody there to help him. 22nd minute, that's the goal for Frankfurt. And then shortly thereafter, in the 35th minute, Ekitike, who was kind of combining with Marmoush to just blow by Bayern's back line. And like I said, whenever there was a chance, they took it and scored. So 2-1 at that point.
Both those guys, brilliant goals. I did think Neuer could have had better efforts potentially. In those cases, it's kind of one-on-one. The second one was even more to the side where I thought Neuer was going to do a better job of attempting to save it. Tough to really blame Neuer. I'm not necessarily blaming him for those goals at all, but a keeper of his caliber would probably tell you that he should have stopped one of those.
Yeah, I agree. I think the second one he should have saved, it was, if I'm remembering correctly, this is the second one, it was a near post shot and he was already going near post. And the thing with Neuer is he, I think, has taken a step back in his actual ability to save shots. And a lot of people were saying this before the Euros, and then he had an absolutely stellar Euros. So, who's really to say? But the thing is, with Neuer, you're not necessarily playing him for his ability to save shots. It's obviously very good. He's one of the best keepers of all time. But you're playing him, especially in this system, for the sweeper style of keeping that he does so high up on the pitch. I mean, we saw it in the Dinamo match. As soon as he got injured and Sven came in, literally 5 minutes later, Dinamo scored 2 goals. The entire defensive system was in shambles.
Yeah, Neuer, he's 38?
Yeah.
There's nothing he can do about the fact that he's going to lose a step, whether it's a half second, a second, a quarter of a second, that's going to matter when you're making these quick reactions for saves. So you're probably going to miss out on 2 or 3 saves over a season that he'd make when he's in his ultimate prime. I'm probably willing to take that and accept that as a Bayern fan and as a manager of your company for the reasons that you listed.
Yeah, I certainly am too, and we'll kind of see what happens here in the next couple of years as he enters the twilight of his career, already retired from international play. I think Neuer's got a few more years left in him. We'll see what he decides to do. His contract's up after the season. But anyways, back to the match now. The thing is, it's 2-1 at this point, and you can totally tell that Frankfurt is so happy playing out at the back, and I keep stressing this, but any chance they get, they're going to take it. And that's the thing about these teams that are comfortable playing in this style, this low block, just playing out of the back. You just got to hope that Bayern's offense is scoring enough goals and they're creative enough to break down a low block, because you're pretty much guaranteeing a few concessions every single match.
Yeah, it's tough at times going against a team that plays that style, no doubt about it. Even if you're the most creative, talented squad in the world on the attack, you're not going to be able to break down everybody every match. You can't just at will be scoring goals unless you're playing a Dinamo Zagreb. So for Bayern, I think it's just about building the way they sync together in that front of the attack. Olise, Gnabry, Kane, Muller, whoever's out there, Coman, Sane when he comes back. It's just about playing together, getting more minutes together, doing positive things together on the pitch, and you're only going to get better and build as a team. So I'm not still worried at all about the way that they approach that. And I think shots will start to fall more. I think they'll just get a better understanding of each other. So that's a positive for me, at least on that end.
Yeah, that's what Bayern's clearly going for, and I think as they play more matches in this system with this group, that type of thing will start to happen. But anyways, in the 38th minute, Bayern got their second goal, which was from the other center back, Dayot Upamecano, which was from another set-piece corner, and he really just scored that goal from all the chaos that happens sometimes on a corner, ping-ponging back and forth, and he was in the right place at the right time and just put it away.
Huge confidence builder for him. Even on the defensive side, it's always good to put one in the back of the net.
Yeah, agreed. And the next big thing that happened was the 53rd minute where Michael Olise got his goal, a man who I thought had a little bit of a quiet first half. He really showed up in the second half and just had a beautiful goal. Assisted from Kane as well. It was nice to see Kane get that assist because, as I mentioned at the jump, he was having a quieter match himself. So there's that magic combination that we like to see, Kane and Olise. And at that point, I was pretty ecstatic because, like I said, I thought more goals were coming just from how strong the offense was looking and how much they were holding possession and creating.
About Olise, I will say, and he's a winger, so this is very tough. All about consistency. If you want to be a top footballer, he's going to get there. He shows flashes of brilliant play, so I'm not worried about that at all. It's just about finding that consistency throughout 90 minutes. You have a tough first half. You come back. If he becomes really consistent, watch out, world. He will be the best player on Bayern, as I predicted. So great to see him link up with Kane as always. And yeah, it's just that consistency for him to take the next step is all I'm saying.
Yeah, so from there, things unfortunately started to fall off the rails a little bit, I thought. In the 66th minute, we saw Kingsley Coman come in. He did not have a great game in my eyes. He hasn't had a great game this whole season for Bayern. And, I mentioned at the start, I thought Kompany's starting lineup was great. I loved it. I actually would have liked to see Serge Gnabry get some rest. To be totally upfront with you, I wanted Leroy Sané to start. That didn't happen. Serge looked tired, and I think he's just going to need a rest, although unfortunately he's going to the German national team now. And also Michael Olise called up to the French national team, so I hope he comes back healthy. But yeah, anyways, back to the 66th minute. Coman comes in, And Kompany's subs in this match were horrific. They were honestly, I don't want to say the reason that the match ended in a draw, but man, this was, maybe it was his inexperience. I don't know what he was trying to do at the end here, but the subs really disrupted the match. Coman, obviously not as much because he's got more playing time with this group, but Coman comes in the 66th minute, does absolutely nothing. I would have loved to see Sané again. Sané is somebody who can create for you, whereas at this point, Coman just doesn't seem so good at creating. He can take somebody one-on-one still and blow by him, but his crossing and his finishing just isn't there right now, whereas Sané would provide you with those opportunities.
Every time I watch Coman, completely lacks that final product, that final key decision that he needs to make.
Exactly.
I don't know what it is about him that's causing that. Definitely needs to clean it up.
Yeah, and then in the 71st minute, we saw Tell come on. I believe that was when Harry Kane got injured, so that one was maybe enforced. I don't hate Tell coming on. I would have actually maybe preferred him even over Coman earlier in the match. But then in the 89th minute, we have Dyer, Limer, and Polina all come on, and that is kind of when things just all went to shit. It completely disrupted the flow of the match. Everybody seemed like they were out of position. The match blew up at that point. It was wide open. Frankfurt was having chances left and right on the other end. Bayern was kind of just scrambling around. The players were seemingly lost. Even players like Kimmich, who had a dynamite match and was always in the right place at the right time, creating things prior to that, was just lost. I don't know why Bayern didn't take the ball back and start to maybe swing it around. I don't want to say the Tuchel you, but control the ball from the back. They just weren't doing that. I guess maybe it's just part of the system, part of the attack, but they were still just making risky passes and things were just falling apart at the seams at that point.
Yeah, I think part of that is just learning still the system that your new manager is trying to get you to play, ingraining that into your mind. At times, you're just going to have frantic moments where you don't know exactly what to do with the ball, how to play from the back, or whatever the case may be. But that just happens at times, I think. And then you bringing in subs that haven't played with each other for a couple years, and things can get dicey.
Yeah, so we saw right before the goal that ended up happening, this is in stoppage time, Frankfurt was, I would say, maybe 3 or 4 hairs away from scoring the equalizer because, like I said, the defense just broke down and they had a wide open shot. Maybe the pass was just not timed exactly correctly, but it could have been 2 more goals right there.
Yeah, the end of these matches, too, just get insane at times. And anything can really happen, plans kind of go to the wayside and goals can really happen at any moment. So I'm never surprised at anything that happens toward the end of the match.
Yeah, and then a minute or two after that, we saw the final scoring moment of the match, Marmoush's equalizer, and again, defensive breakdown just happened there at the end, and it was so frustrating because, like I said, there are ways to prevent this. That goal should have never happened. They should have not had that much space at the end there because, up until the very end, Bayern dominated, control, whatever you want to use. They held the ball for most of the match, and things broke down there. Again, Marmoush is a great player, great pace, great finishing. He was just deadly and lethal this entire match, and he got the goal there in the 94th.
I'm assuming Marmoush has gotten time with Egypt. I was just looking him up, and he's Egyptian. I don't know his history playing with them in the international squad, but just imagining him with Mo Salah would be a joy to watch. I got to look more into this Marmoush guy, but he's a high-quality player.
Yeah, he's relatively younger. He had a good season last year, and he's really broke onto the scene this year in the Bundesliga. So we'll see what happens next for him. But yeah, that's how the match ended. I mentioned that there was a great chance for Bayern at the end. Muller could have scored, but there was a great save. Again, Frankfurt's keeper had a great match. And Frankfurt is a very good squad. They beat Bayern 5-1 last year at home. So that was, I guess, Tuchel's Bayern. But yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if Frankfurt finishes top 4 in the Bundesliga.
And I forget, I think I asked this prior, but are they in the Champions League right now?
They're in Europa League.
Okay.
Yeah, because they finished 6th last year, and the Bundesliga got 5 Champions League spots. Dortmund got that last one.
Yeah, they're definitely a good squad. So Bayern, I'm always expecting them to beat these teams, but Bundesliga once again is showing that it's a better league for sure.
Yeah, and not to mention, I heard some rumors that the Milwaukee Pro Soccer team that, God, I hope finally comes in 2026, might be partnering with Frankfurt. So if that's the case, that's just super exciting.
Great news. And if I am a season ticket holder for that team, I would unfortunately not enjoy having ties with Frankfurt as a diehard Bayern fan, but I'd accept the recognition and marketing that they'd no doubt give us.
Good. And, to close things off here, I don't really know how to give match awards for this match because honestly, pretty much everybody on Bayern looked so good in possession, looked so dominant in possession, and most players even looked good out of possession for a while too, but at the end there, everybody just kind of looked horrible, and when these counters would happen out from the back, it looked like Bayern didn't know what to do, so I honestly don't know how to give awards. Again, I mentioned Kimmich had a strong match. Muller had an up-and-down match, but provided some much-needed creativity. Olise's goal, obviously, I think was probably the moment of the match. For Bayern, Marmoush's equalizer would have been the overall moment of the match. But, yeah, I don't know. I got nothing.
My award for this match will actually be the man of the season so far. And I'm giving it to Vincent Kompany because I'll tell you this much. You can say whatever you want about him, but I'm enjoying watching Bayern tenfold compared to watching it under Tuchel, so well done to him for at least having a more exciting style of play.
That's fair. We got some exciting matches coming up, too, after the international break. Stuttgart in the Bundesliga and then Barca in the Champions League. So this tough run for Bayern continues. I hope everybody's fresh, and I'm ready to get my popcorn out because these are going to be good ones.
He will have his popcorn out. I'm speaking to the listeners directly here because part of me thinks Danny is secretly going to be rooting for Hansi Flick in that match. The guy loves him.
Hey, it's no secret that I love Hansi Flick. I love the ball that he plays, and I was indeed rooting for Bayern to hire him again as the head coach when it seemed like a lot of members of the old guard wanted that, and the members of the new guard wanted to go with their guy Kompany. So hey, it's no secret that I like what Flick brings to the table, and that's going to be a very interesting match because I think that Barca, I've watched them a little bit this season, is very similar to Bayern in that their attack is so good and so lethal and so dominant, but their defense is a little bit weaker as well.
I'm not sure if this means anything. I'm sorry for going off the rails here, but if I'm not mistaken, Flick was the name of a bug in A Bug's Life?
I think you are not mistaken.
Beautiful. Good for Hansi.
Well, I don't really know how to top that with anything, so you got anything else to say?
All I will say is that international breaks hurt my soul. I'm in a time right now where I need some beautiful Chelsea and Bayern football, and I'm not going to have it for a couple of weeks here, so I really just can't wait until the break is over.
Yeah, man, me too. I'm really bumming about it. I wish these breaks would be maybe better timed or maybe wouldn't happen at all. I don't know, but we'll be back in the saddle soon enough. And hey, we've got some cool stuff coming for you over the break that we're kind of working on and scheming up right now. So there won't be a break from us, that's for sure. And there won't be a break for you either. So stay tuned.
And there's NFL football over in London now, so I guess that's something.
There we go. Well, I think it's time to send us off into the good night. Mia San Mia.
Up to Chelsea.